Hey, what is going on guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys my opinion on the best junglers for Season 5 patch 5.8. So recently this patch there was a pretty good change to the Black Cleaver, and in my opinion that's made a few champions quite a bit stronger, so my list is a little bit different from last patch. So without further ado, let's get right into the video. So first up on my list I have Volibear. Now if you guys have been around my channel for a while, then you probably know that I haven't been the biggest fan of Volibear, but recently playing against a lot of him, I think he's actually a pretty strong pick. So once you do get to late game as Volibear, because of the Cinderhulk item and because of his passive, it just makes him completely unkillable basically. Unless your team is running Ignite, then you're never gonna be able to kill him, because if he's got a Spirit Visage, if he's got his passive up, and with all of his tank stats, he's just going to be healing for so much in teamfights, and he's just going to be able to soak a ton of damage and just be that really strong front line for your team. So that's why I think he is a pretty good pick right now. So some pros to Volibear are that he's got great clears in the jungle. His fear makes it so that he clears really nicely without taking a lot of damage, and as well as his bite gives him some pretty good clears as well. He's got strong ganks in the early game. If he can get behind his opponents and flip them with his Q and slow them, then he's pretty much gonna at least burn their flash every single time. And like I said, he's super tanky as well. His passive is really strong too for like tower diving in the early game, and it's really strong late game as well for soaking a ton of damage. One con to Volibear is that he's easily kited, and this is why I haven't had him on my list before, but because of the Righteous Glory item, I think it makes him a lot stronger, and it's a lot harder to kite him now because of that item. So I would definitely recommend picking up Righteous Glory on Volibear so that you can make your engages a lot stronger. Next up on my list I have Gragas. So pros to Gragas are he has a very strong early game. He's got great CC, which makes his early game ganks really strong, and it enables him to lock down a target, and you're pretty much going to at least burn the enemy's summoners if you do get your body slam off on the opponent and then follow that up with your Q. He's got great level 6 ganks as well because of his ultimate, and he does percentage health damage with his W, which makes him a really good pick in this meta, and it enables him to clear really nicely as well. He scales really well into the late game because of the Cinderhulk item, and his ult is pretty game changing. It can work against you sometimes because you can end up knocking the enemies away from your team if you whiff your ultimate, but if you are a good Gragas player and you can land your ultimate, say on the enemy AD carry, and you can knock the enemy AD carry back into your team, then his ultimate can be pretty game changing. So one con to Gragas is that he is harder to play in my opinion, because he is very skill shot reliant with his ultimate, and if you can't land your ultimate consistently, then he's not the strongest pick. His ultimate is very game changing like I said, and if you can't land it, then you're missing out on a lot of his kit. So next up on my list I have Wukong. Pros to Wukong are he's really strong with the new Black Cleaver item, and this is why he's on my list for this patch, because if you don't know what the new Black Cleaver does is whenever you get a proc of physical damage off on the opponent, it shreds the enemy's armor by 5%, and this stacks up to 6 times. So every time you're getting a proc of physical damage off on the opponent, then you can just shred your opponent's armor by a lot, and because of Wukong's ultimate, you're going to be able to get those procs of the armor shred off. So this makes him a really good pick in my opinion, and it just makes him a good pick in this tank meta, because what tanks do is they obviously build armor, and if you can shred the enemy's armor, then it just enables your team to deal a lot more damage in team fights. So he's a bruiser as well. He can build a few damage items and then go full tank after that. He's also got pretty solid early game ganks with his W and then with the engage with his E, and he's got very strong level 6 ganks because of his ultimate. His W is also pretty nice for juking, and it can get you out of a lot of different situations. So if you know how to use Wukong's W correctly in certain situations, it can definitely save you from a sticky situation. And he's a great team fighter as well because of the AoE damage from his ultimate. Some cons to Wukong are he does have weaker early game clear speeds, and his early game ganks can be hard to pull off at times. If your teammates are pushing out in lane, then it's going to be hard for you to get a good gank off because Wukong doesn't have any CC to lock the opponents down with, and unless your teammate has some sort of CC to lock them down, then it's going to be hard for you to pull off successful ganks unless the enemies are pushed out in lane quite far. Next up on my list, I have Amumu. So pros to Amumu he's got a super strong teamfight because of his ultimate. He's got great CC because of his Q and his ultimate, and he scales really well into the late game because of the Cinderhulk item. He's also got percentage health damage with his W, which makes him a very good pick in this meta, and he's got tons of build options as well. If I'm ahead when playing as Amumu, then I might just go like a couple AP items because he actually scales really nicely with AP. But if I'm going even or if I'm behind, then I'll just go full tank on Amumu, and you can do really well going that build as well. So he's got strong engage as well with his Q, and he's got great clear speeds in the jungle too. Some cons to Amumu he is quite mana hungry in the early game, and he does have a weaker early game presence compared to some of the other junglers. So last but not least, on my top 5, I have Sejuani. Pros to Sejuani she's got great CC with her Q, her E, and her ultimate. She's also got surprising damage. I usually like to build Liandry's Torment on Sejuani, and that item just synergizes so well with her because she's going to be able to deal a ton of damage because of the Liandry's passive. She's also got a really strong teamfight because of the pick potential with her ultimate, and she's got great level 6 ganks as well. Her ultimate pretty much secures you at least the enemy's summoners when you gank at level 6, and if the enemy's flashes down, then you're basically guaranteed to pick up a kill. She scales really well into the late game as well because of the Cinderhulk item, and one good ultimate can ultimately win you the game. If you can find that pick with your ultimate on a high priority target on the enemy team, then as long as your team follows up, the chances of you winning that fight are going to be very high. And she also does percentage health damage with her W. One con to Sejuani is that she does have a weaker early game compared to some of the other junglers. So first up on the honorable mentions, I have Rammus. So I think Rammus is quite underrated right now. He's a really good pick if the enemies have a high AD comp because he can build a Thornmail, and because of the Cinderhulk item, he just scales really well into the late game now. And with the Righteous Glory item being introduced to the game recently, I think he's just a much stronger pick than he was before. So if you're looking to try out Rammus, then I would definitely recommend trying him out now. Next up I have Vi. So Vi definitely has a very strong early game presence, so you want to make sure that you're ganking in the early game as Vi and trying to at least burn the enemy's summoner spells and then repeating with a gank a little bit later. Her level 6 ganks are also really strong, and she's great at locking down the enemy AD carry in a teamfight because of her ultimate, so I definitely do think Vi is still a pretty good pick, but she does get outscaled because of the Cinderhulk item in the late game. Unless you do want to build that item on Vi, I wouldn't recommend doing it though, because the AD that she gets from the Warrior enchantment is really nice, and I find that if I do build the Cinderhulk on her, then she just really doesn't do any damage, and you want to be doing damage when playing as Vi in my opinion, so I do think she is still a pretty strong pick, but not top 5 anymore. Next up on the honorable mentions, I have Rek'Sai. So she's a really strong early game jungler, and you gotta make sure that you're making a presence in the early game, because if you don't, then you're going to get outscaled. But if you can pick up a few kills in the early game, then she snowballs really hard, and because of the Black Cleaver, it works really nice on her. And I think she is a lot stronger with that item now, so I definitely recommend building the Black Cleaver on her, because she's going to be able to get a lot of the Armor Shred procs off because of her W, and then because of her Q and her E as well. So Rek'Sai is a pretty good pick, but just make sure that you are being aggressive in the early game, because if you don't, then you're probably just going to get outscaled. Next up I have Nautilus. So Nautilus is a really strong CC tank, and if you're looking for one of those champions, I would definitely recommend picking him up. He scales really well into the late game because of the Cinderhulk item, and he can just lock down a single target really well because of his strong CC. So if you're looking for a tanky CC initiator, then I would definitely recommend picking up Nautilus. Next up I have Zac. So in my opinion, Zac is a pretty good pick. He's got really strong ganks because of his E, and if you max that out first, then you're going to be able to pull off ganks from places that a lot of other junglers can't. So for example, if you're going for a gank down bot lane, and if you're sitting in the tri-bush, as long as it's not warded, you can just walk a little bit towards the lane, charge up your E, and then surprise the enemies with a really strong gank. So in my opinion, he's a pretty good pick, and if you're looking for another tank jungler, I would definitely recommend picking up Zac. So last but not least on my honorable mentions, I have Skarner. So in my opinion, Skarner's a lot stronger now because of the Righteous Glory item, because it makes his engage a lot stronger than it was before. Before, he would just get kited pretty easily because he didn't have a gap closer, and it made it a lot harder to get to that back line and use his ultimate. But because of this item, I think he is a lot stronger now. So if you're wondering why I don't have champions like Sion and Nunu on my list, it's because I'm not a huge fan of champions who can't make a presence in the early game. When I'm playing as Sion and Nunu, I feel like if my team doesn't do well in the early game, then it's going to be really hard to carry as them. If your team feeds in the early game as them, then it's going to be just pretty much impossible because their ganks in the early game aren't very strong. They don't have any strong CC engage or gap closer, so it makes it really hard to pull off good ganks unless the enemies are pushed up to your tower. So I wouldn't recommend playing them if you're looking to carry solo queue. They are pretty good picks for competitive play, Sion or Nunu especially. I just think that Sion's a lot better for top lane because he can bully his opponents out of lane, and in the jungle you have to wait till level 6 to be able to pull off effective ganks with him. So that's just my 2 cents on those two champions. A lot of other people are rating them pretty high, and I just wanted to let you guys know what I thought of them. So that is all for the video, guys. If you enjoyed, then be sure to give it a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you all have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.